Steve Cooper sacked yesterday by Leicester City. He has now gone. Did Leicester fans ever take to Steve Cooper? Ex-Nottingham Forest, in he comes. Were you ever going to welcome him with open arms? And honestly, when you look at it, where else do you think you might have been at this particular stage in the season? Leicester, a club who lies 16th in the league this morning after 12 games, 2 wins from 12, 4 draws, 6 defeats. But where else did you think you would be at this particular time? Chris is a Leicester fan. Chris, good morning. What's your take on this?
Good morning, everyone. I didn't really take to Cooper, but I was prepared to give him a chance because I think he came to Leicester on the back of, we got this points deduction. Nobody else really wanted to come, so we got him by default, really. So I just think the fans haven't taken to it, not because of the Nottingham Forest connection. I mean, look at Wes Morgan, for goodness sake. I just think uninspirational appointment, and that's just been reflected. The fans have never taken to him, and I was at the game on Saturday against Chelsea, and I really did think before that game, the return of Maresca, I thought the stadium would be bouncing. I really did.
But Chris, this might sound naive from me, and absolutely correct me. You've every right to if I'm wrong here. Is it not your job as fans to take to the new manager, no matter what? You say, yes. I never quite took to him. Well, you'd made your mind up already.
Yeah, well, yes, I agree with that to a certain extent, but I was prepared to give him a chance.
But you had to.
Well, yeah, I know we had to. But it wasn't one of those uplifting appointments for me, and I think a lot of Leicester fans felt the same about him.
A lot of people saying it's a bewildering decision, Chris. I'll leave that with you. Does it bewilder you?
What, the new sack?
Yes.
No, I'm happy with it.
Right.
I must admit, I didn't see it coming this quickly.
And who do you want?
I'd like to see Potter in. I know we nearly got him in front of Cooper, but I think the stumbling block was that points deduction. But that's all finished now. That's all gone.
So you're happy to go back to Potter, even though he dragged his feet and coming to you first time round?
I'm happy to go back to him or David Moyes.
Okay, Chris, thank you for that. Thanks for the call. Here's Craig, another Leicester fan. Martin and Simon will dive in a second. Craig, where do you stand on this? Was it inevitable that he was going to get sacked?
Yeah, I think it was always going to happen. I don't think many fans wanted him to start off with. I just think, obviously, we're exactly where we want to be at the minute, but I just think the style of football and the way he sets his teams up, it's just not the way forward. You look at all the teams in and around us, Everton, Wolves, Palace, they all played decent football. Ipswich, we drew at Ipswich, we should have lost that game. We beat Southampton, we were probably lucky in that game. So absolutely we're where we want to be in the league, obviously out of the relegation zone, but he's just not the man, I don't think.
Yeah, but Craig, all those clubs you've just mentioned, apart from Everton, you're above them.
I know, yeah, but obviously just by chance, really, at the minute, I think. Like I say, for 80 minutes against Ipswich, we weren't even really in the game until they got a red card. And then the last 10 minutes we turned up, we pinched a goal, we got a point out of it. On another day, Ipswich would have beat us and they'd be above us right now,
Okay, well, who's the man to succeed Steve Cooper then, Craig, before you go?
I think Moyes or Potter. I don't think Ruud van Nistelrooy.
Oh, I think he was going to say Ruud van Nistelrooy. He got to the Niest and then went. Here, final one from another Leicester fan. Here's Chris again, and a different Chris this time. Chris, give us your take on this.
Hi, guys. Nice to listen to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning. What do you think of the sacking of Cooper?
I do think it's a bit early. I would have waited till the winter December kind of play. But it's just the style of play. I just don't think the players have come from a Maresca style in the Championship. And I know it had a couple of wobbles, but then to go back to the holding and the defence isn't there to do it, I think it was going to come at one point where he would have been fired.
I mean, when you look at it though, Chris, and I think this is an important point, you're 16th in the league. Come the end of the season, you'd stay up.
That's the aim of the season. I think when we came up from the Championship, I said, literally everyone that I know said, look, the idea is keep into the Premier League, build from there. Doesn't matter who the manager is, what it is.
Yeah.
Just build and build and build and get us back into where he was 3-4 years ago.
I mean, somebody could come in, yes. You might play more exciting football, but you might go down. I mean, if it all finished today, you'd still remain in the Premier League. Listen, Chris, thanks so much for the call. Simon, you could tell, and Martin, the thing that strikes me, they were never going to welcome him with open arms. He was never going to have a real chance of succeeding.
Well, perhaps, when you have fans phoning in, most of the time it's like going to a restaurant. If you go to a good restaurant and you like it, you tell one person. If you go to a restaurant you don't like it, you tell 10. So you tend to get people phoning in when they're not happy with something, or they're not happy, or they're happy that the person's been fired. But I haven't watched enough of Leicester to say whether they're entitled to have this view. What I have watched over the last couple of years is the decline of Leicester in various spaces and places, and lots of reasons why. I think Brendan Rodgers was culpable. This group of players that have been hanging around for a period of time, as Martin describes, are the same group of players that potentially got them relegated from the Premier League into the Championship, and came back up at the first bounce because they probably had a bigger budget than everybody else in the division. They've gotten away without getting point sanctions, which they should have got, but they got out of a technicality.
Yeah. I mean, should style matter when you're trying to stay in the Premier League?
Well, in this day, I personally think in the first season of the Premier League, you're coming back into a division that you're not as good as. You'll be very fortunate to be able to impress yourself in such a way that you can create outcomes that's easy on the eye as well as being effective. And I would personally prefer to stay in the division, be able to improve my lot by buying better players, and just do within reason what's reasonable to stay in the division. I understand that in this day and age there is an expectation of the way that teams should play, and I don't think Palace have been great this season, so I don't know why they cite the example on the previous caller saying that Palace are more this and more that and more than the other. They haven't been. I mean, probably the best of the promoted sides so far this season have been Ipswich.
Simon, put yourself though back into the position, as an owner of the football club, and you just kind of sense that you're not completely convinced. You're watching the performances. You invariably you go down to the dressing room area and you're hearing a negativity from people that I suppose respected people that you have brought you success. They brought a Premier League. You've won one. A Premier League on
there's no one there from 8 years ago, is there?
Vardy's still there, isn't he?
Sure, but I mean, ultimately, Vardy's on his last knockings, and I would think to myself, if the only person I've really got to create anything for me effectively up front is a 38-year-old forward, I'd want to be doing better as an owner for the manager to make sure that he's got more resource. That's the first thing I'd want to do. The second thing I'd want to do, and the last thing I'd want to do, is hear from the players. I'm not interested. I'm interested in the manager. I'm not interested in the griping, carpings, and bitching and whinings of players that will always use an excuse as to everything why it's not their fault. I want the manager. Now, if I've got it wrong with a manager, I will see that on a Saturday afternoon. Eventually, I'll make a decision. And if those guys have got there, but going down to that dressing room, and if it is true, and it tends to be no smoke without fire, that the owner is listening to players have a view on what the tactics are, then that owner is going to reap the whirlwind of that sort of management style, because it doesn't make for a big football club.
Who fits the bill, Martin?
Well, it's interesting. Potter seems to be maybe the safe pair of hands to bring in there, or he's already actually wanted the job. But there's just looking through the list of previous managers. There's been quite a catalogue of managers at this football club. I think when you start losing games, as they have recently, and the performances, Jim, there's a feeling of change. But maybe Steve Cooper was just the man. You look what he did at Forest, something similar, took them up, kept them in the Premier League create that stability, and look at them now.
It's the dreaded financial fair play that again strikes. We saw it 2 years ago where Leicester could not meet the PSR obligations of the Premier League, and they told everybody, forget about buying first team players, we're spending hundreds of millions on our training facility. That's the backstory that was being told to people when Leicester suddenly weren't buying players and Rodgers was complaining.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you have to try and do a bit of both, don't you? But that's PSR. If you cannot meet financial obligations because you're constantly being told to sell players to meet your obligations, eventually you're going to find yourself in a challenge.
Yeah. What next for Steve Cooper? There's another question. Maybe can he find himself a place in Tuchel's lineup? Possibly, because he knows most of the England players, that's for sure. There's a scoreline nobody saw coming. Manchester City 0, Tottenham 4. What? Yeah, we'll get into that.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.